Welcome to another Get Geekish podcast and happy almost Halloween. I'm Bino and it's Derek over there. Say hello to the people, Derek.
Hello, people.
That was like the creepy witch from the old Disney cartoons.
Yeah.
But being that it is the Halloween season and we have lots of memories on it, we thought we were going to talk a little bit about Halloween memories. Specifically, we unearthed some photos of some of our old Halloween costumes because I feel like costumes have gotten a lot better in the last few decades.
They have, but let me tell you...
Store-bought ones, anyway.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this. Have you been to Spirit lately?
Yeah, and I'm kind of upset that they have things like 90s grunge rocker as costume sets you can buy.
Okay, well, yeah, that kind of hurts the soul a little bit. But they also have, like, the costumes of the 80s and 70s in there, where it's just that fake plastic mask that hurts.
Oh, they have those again?
Yeah, it's in the retro packaging. I almost picked up the Darth Vader one just to have it because I was like,
those are creepy because you go there and then every kid in elementary school class would have one of those things, and they were awful because they smelled bad. It was really hard, sharp plastic that you basically like cut the outside of your eyes or the side of your cheeks, putting them on and off, and that little tiny elastic strap that was going to break at least once or twice a night every Halloween.
I wonder if, like, I wanted to buy one just to see if they smelled the same, if they, were this, just for the nostalgia, because that's a huge thing with us elder emos and millennials and whatever you want to call them. But, and places are milking it. Case in point, McDonald's.
You got some, huh?
I did.
Oh, you're lucky. I tried that hard because I heard there was people, getting in line for them and places selling out. So I didn't go any farther than going, I should try and get one. Nah.
Well, here's the thing: is I think you should definitely try it because, at least down here in Texas, they're like, I went and there wasn't a long line or anything like that. I just went in. I was like, oh, do you guys have the bucket Happy Meals? They're like, yeah, we do. And I was like, cool, hook me up.
Maybe I have to give it a shot because that's one of those things that's nostalgic fun of. As a child, if you grew up anywhere between 1982 and 1995, somewhere in there, those buckets were a part of your life in one way or another. Mm-hmm. Either you had some yourself, your friends had some, or you had one of your friends' neighbors that had like 40 of them stacked up to give out to kids to use for Halloween.
Yeah, or you got them from a garage sale.
That's true.
I will say it's a little, they were doing weeks where it's like Ghost and then the Witch and then the Pumpkin, which I understand and I applaud them for it because that's just to drive people to come back rather than buying them all at once. Because I did ask, I was like, can I pick and choose? They're like, no, we only have the Ghost. It's like, okay. So I need to go get the Pumpkin. But I will say I'm a little disappointed. I don't know if you can see this.
Well, the handle's different.
Yeah, it doesn't have the top anymore. You remember how it used to have a top on it and you could pop it off?
It was like a little witch's hat that went on there?
Yeah, well, now it's just part of the handle. And it's all open, which is lame. So that's a little disappointing, but...
Safety hazards. Stupid.
Is that what it is? Is that why they did that?
Probably. I don't know. It's got to be something safety-wise or cost-cutting-wise. I mean, it's your only options there.
I would assume it's probably more cost-cutting than safety because...
Well, that little witch handle thing they put on, that can't be any cheaper than a little hat to put on, can it?
I don't know, man.
I'm not a plastic manufacturer. I can't dive into the physics behind this, but
it's still fun to have for the nostalgia, but it is not the same. And I feel like that's that's what a lot of it is. A lot of toy developers and everything like that are targeting us because we have money now and incomes, and they're like, hey, remember these when you couldn't buy them? And it's the same thing of when you buy it, you're like, yeah, it's not the same, but I applaud your effort.
I also wonder how many of the things that happen like that might actually be pretty darn close to the same, but we have memories built on our heads that weren't necessarily part of it that make it just seem different. I mean, the hat is obviously different on that.
I was going to say
that's not a Mandela effect at all. They had lids. Because I remember the orange ones had there were some years they had different kinds of pumpkins. There's like 3 or 5 different styles of pumpkins, and each one had a different little hat because one was round and one was kind of triangle-y. And
yeah, I'm disappointed in that. I wish they would also bring back the McNuggets, the little chicken McNuggets that were dressed up in
Ah, yes, those were good.
in like the Halloween costumes. I still have a pirate one somewhere, but
They could bring back the pink slime nuggets too, because the new nuggets don't taste the same.
oh, God. So I mean, there we go. And we touched on the costumes of old. And again, I kind of wanted to swing back by spirit. Maybe after Halloween, there'll be some there on sale. I don't necessarily want it to wear it. I just want it for nostalgia. And I sent you a picture of my dad and his siblings when they were kids.
That was a downright creepy photo.
Yeah, if you look at if you Google just Halloween photos like from the 60s and before, maybe even some of the 70s and before, they're nightmare fuel. Mm-hmm. Absolute nightmare fuel. And
actually, I post a link in the blog to some terrifying ones that somebody put together a list of from like the 20s and 30s, black and white photos of old creepy costumes. I almost couldn't make it through the list. It was like, no.
I know, and what's funny is back then, it's normal. Like the photo I sent you, there was a Fred Flintstone in there and a Morticia Addams and something else, but it was one of those ones you're sitting there looking at it, and the more you stare at it, the creepier it gets, and just that Fred Flintstone mask is that plastic one that cuts up your face, everything like that, and it's just staring into your soul, and I'm like, what is this?
And all my brain thinks is like, this is why we have Charles Manson documentaries. So we got an idea right here, because I found my costume pictures, and I'm going to post them on the blog. Everyone's watching the video can go to the blog and see them right now. But you haven't seen most of these, so I'm going to send them to you right now in Messenger, and you can give your little blind reaction to some of these costumes right away. But you have to do some theater of their mind, because some people are just listening.
So I will say one thing that we've talked about before on Halloweens of the past and everything like that is growing up in Colorado, your costumes had to accommodate a coat.
They did, unless you had costumes that had lots of fur built into them, which I apparently had a lot more of than I remember.
You'll
see that there's a lot of costumes that stood on their own that could hold up to winter's cold.
I got one.
Yes, that's the first one. That's the youngest one I can find of myself.
This one, if I had to guess, you are a neglected Ronald McDonald child, because you look like you would be the son of Ronald McDonald or something in training. Are you Raggedy Andy?
It's just a Halloween clown. It's a clown that's orange and black. I was adorable, gosh darn it, but I don't know what that creepy orange thing I'm holding is. It kind of worries me.
It looks like a stuffed animal of some sorts.
Yeah. So that
Did your mom make that costume?
She made almost all my costumes. So
okay, I was gonna say it looks very homemade. Now, I have to ask, like, is it a dress? Because it looks like a dress.
No, just had big baggy pants and clown shoes.
Okay.
So that was probably when I'm guessing I was probably 2 or 3 years old, and that was. Next one of my favorite costumes of all time. That would have stood the test of winter.
Was this one homemade?
It was.
Okay, so what I'm looking at now is a dang good Care Bears costume.
I was Funshine Bear. I love me some Care Bears. I was Funshine, and my sister was Grumpy Bear, so we were quite the pair going around in that. I mean, I look at that in today's dollars. Even somebody making that today, that was probably $400 or $500 costume if somebody were to go and buy all that fur and make it today. So it was pretty.
Do you still have that?
No.
Oh, I was gonna say that'd be a good one for Comic-Con for your kid.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I when I wore that, I was 4 or less, so it was it was a pretty small costume.
Should have your mom make you a new one, a new Care Bear one.
I do have some Care Bear pajama onesie. That's close. All right, going on to number 3. Got to throw in the Power Grayskull on there.
All right, let's take a look here. Oh, going the wrong way. Oh yeah, is that a mop on your head?
It's actually yellow yarn.
Yarn?
My mom made into a wig. I dig my fuzzy boots though. That was a good memory for that. Being a little 4 or 5 year old He-Man, I was all about it. What
is that face you're making?
We were carving pumpkins. I was probably, trying to make a pumpkin face. Move on to our next one. This is another pop culture classic that was great for winter. None other than the Pink Panther.
I do have to say real quick before we go into the Pink Panther, I'm just staring at your He-Man one of you with all of that yarn on your head. Like, that's a lot of yarn. And just your pose, the way you're looking into the camera with all that yawn, it's like maybe he's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline.
I have the locks of Prince Adam.
Okay, so this Pink Panther one is another homemade one, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Dang, dude.
Yeah, again, winter, no problem. I probably sweated like mad when I had to wear that in school, but... I also like the costumes like these because they actually covered your face. I couldn't stand the costumes where I had this huge old costume and then your face is like sticking out of their neck. It weirded me out like that. So I liked it when your face was actually part of the cartoon character faces.
Well, and it looks comfy too. And I do have to say, I wish I would have known your mom had these skills when we started going to Comic-Cons.
I was pretty lucky in that sense because she also continued the next year. Looney Tunes was popular, so I went with Sylvester the Cat. Yet another... I was apparently that close to being a furry in elementary school.
The Sylvester one is good, but it's a little creepy with the eyes. I'm not gonna lie.
It's also he looks very sad. Like I think in the pattern he was smiling, but it's kind of hanging down. You're like, oh, dude, Tweety get you down or what?
I was gonna say this is a Sylvester that is getting ready to go to the unemployment line or is. I don't know, getting kicked out. I don't know. He looks very sad.
This is stock market crash, Sylvester. Now, this next one I feel is one of those things. It gives me the geeky cool points, even though I had no idea what most of it was. I just liked watching it on TV. So this, I'm going to see if you can take a stab at what you think it might actually be first.
Voltron, isn't it?
Technically, partially correct. You get 25% credit. This is when I say, Mom, can I be the robot from Mazinger Z crossed with the Voltron Robot Force robot?
Okay.
So my feet are from the Voltron, not the Lion Voltron, but the vehicle Voltron, and the top is the Mazinger Z, which I couldn't remember the name of that show for 20 years until I had to look it up later. I'm like, oh, wow, I liked anime when I was a little kid. And that helmet, all paper mache that we made.
That's pretty legit.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some of these, man, going, you should like make adult versions of these because they would kill at Comic-Con.
I feel like I should. And I apparently had weird taste as I got older because, let's see, here's the next one. For some reason, I decided to say, I think I would like to be a walrus fisherman. Not a fisherman that fishes walrus, but an actual walrus that has fishing stuff on.
I don't like this one.
Is it gonna haunt your dreams?
Why is your face like that? I don't like this one at all.
It's a walrus mask. What do you mean? Why is
I
my
understand,
face like that?
No. Why is your eyes like you look concerned? I don't like this one at all. This one is no. That's a no from me, dude.
Well, it only gets worse from here because then we get to the awkward. I think this was 5th or 6th grade. You know, when people start getting awkward. And 1992, the year that Batman Returns came out.
I don't like this one either, but I do have to say this is pretty spot on. Like this is really good.
Yeah, it was very spot on for the movie. The only thing about this one, like this was a fun costume, but this particular one brings back bad memories of those things you don't get over. That Halloween, went out trick or treating with some of my friends, and one of my friends that was going trick or treating before we even got to the first house came over and grabbed the nose and pulled it off, which is a prosthetic nose stuck on with spirit gum. So then the entire rest of the night, the nose wouldn't stay on. I ended up having to take it off, and I was all upset because I didn't have any makeup on that spot on my nose, and I thought it looked stupid. And someday I might forgive Nick M., but today's not that day. So, and that's where I stopped the list because once I started getting older, then costumes got a little bit different, better. But those were most ones I could find from like elementary school, middle school, and younger. That the 1980s, early 1990s. That's what I had.
I would say that's pretty spot on. So like, mine one year was and the thing is I don't have pictures of a lot of mine. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have to paint you a picture. One year it was kindergarten, I want to say, and we didn't get a Halloween costume, right? My parents forgot or whatever. And it was I had to go to school, so essentially my mom just grabbed a roll of toilet paper, wrapped it around me, and said, "You're a mummy."
Toilet paper mummy? Hey, that's a solid costume.
Yeah, but it's one of those ones where, again, like, like your nose after it's been ripped off, the toilet paper, back in the early 90s, late 80s, it wasn't the quality that we have today. It wasn't Charmin, it was it was stuff that fell apart pretty easy, so I'd had to like keep taping
if
it.
the humidity climbs above 25%, it's not going to last long.
Yeah. Luckily kindergarten was only like a half day, so
Didn't have to last.
Another one is I went through a phase just like you where I was obsessed with Looney Tunes.
Ooh,
and Marvin the Martian, favorite character.
I've seen this picture and it was a pretty solid costume.
Unfortunately, taken out of context, Marvin the Martian, if you've seen him, he has a very like
his face is just
dark,
black.
Yeah, it's just black. It's like a black hole. So we got it could have been shoe polish, to be honest with you. It's awfully shiny in the picture, but my face got painted black, and I had to wear glasses. So every time I wanted a picture taken, I had to take them off.
Which I'm sure took some of that paint off with it.
Oh yeah, but I loved that costume. But looking back at it now, I kind of like look at it and just go, "Oh, why?"
Bad decisions might have been made.
Well, I mean, there was no offense behind it. It was just a cartoon character.
Yeah,
but
they just take out a card. Somebody sees that on the internet now. They're going to put you as a poster. Like, look what you did.
Yeah. Another time, for some reason, I wanted to be a hobo. Like the stereotypical.
That was a big thing in the late 80s.
Late 80s, early 90s. I don't know why. And, I had my bindle and everything. So.
Is that the sack on a stick?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make sure I got that.
What is it? The thing is, it's not even a sack. It's a handkerchief tied on there, which would hold like 3 personal items, maybe.
3 personal items.
But for some reason, I thought that was a cool costume. I'm trying to think of. There was a couple of other times where I dressed up and stuff, but again, it snows right around Halloween in Colorado, so I had to wear coats. And
everything's taken. Everyone's dressed up as Dracula, and then they've got like a bright green Columbia jacket on top of it. You're like, it takes away from some of the magic.
Oh man, there was a couple of times where I threw a fit, and I was like, I want people to see my costume, so I went. And man, I was freezing by like the 5th house. You go up, you're like, trick or treat, please.
Can I come inside? I'm dying.
Don't go in a stranger's house. I don't care.
Well, the other part about that, I think a lot of people never really think about too, is if you've been in Colorado, you think of coats and planning costumes are warm and things like that. But a lot of costumes, people overlook the footwear. You could be warm with snow pants and a jacket and a hat on, but if your costume requires some weird like little platform shoes or pleather boots or something like that, it's miserable because your feet don't fit in them and they get frozen solid and they hurt.
Well, and on top of that too, you have to look back at the quality. I mean, the quality of the costumes still hasn't really changed. They've improved a little bit, as has the price, but it's still just a thin, cheap material that has like a design on it, where you look at it, you're like, okay, I guess I'll go with it.
Yeah, like, this is a sheet, but it's got a pirate design on it. So yeah, cool, it's pirate pants.
You just reminded me of another one. I did the stereotypical ghost with a sheet, an old bed sheet with the holes cut out. That's a classic. I mean,
you ever notice that the straight up sheet ghost costumes don't work unless you have the see-through black fabric on it? Because it was just it just doesn't look right. You're like, what's going on? As soon as you put those fake black eyes, like, oh, cool, a ghost. But until that happens, just like, what the heck are you doing? What do you?
Yeah, I didn't have those. It was just holes in my eye, like much like which the Sylvester one is. The eyes were just piercing through. Oh man. Well, and I mean, I would say trick or treating back then, there was always told, only go up to houses with the porch lights on. Don't disturb them if they don't have the porch lights off.
Yeah, I always thought that was an actual rule. And I see kids nowadays, I'm like, dude, the house is completely black. Why are you going to knock on the door? Like,
it's not a rule?
Well, apparently not, because when we take our little one on trick or treating, I always thought those were the kind of things, and we're trying to explain to her, like, if they don't have their porch lights and they don't look at home, then you don't bother them, because not everybody participates in Halloween, and not everybody enjoys having their doorbell rung 375 times a night.
I will say, like,
when they have like the gates shut and people are like trying to climb over the gates, like, guys, if they literally put something in the way of the sidewalk, they probably don't want you coming in.
It was maybe it was an unspoken. Well, it was a spoken rule that some parents didn't pass it down to their kids. I don't know. I mean, because there was always those kids that looked at a house that was all blacked out. They're like, oh, they're being spooky. That's where a witch lives. Blah blah blah. Let's go antagonize her. And it's like, I'm pretty sure it's the Stevensons, and they're out on vacation, guys. So
yeah, or the fact that like, oh, they're not home. Like, yeah, because we have a kid we're taking trick or treating.
Yeah, it's nowadays. It's with Ring doorbells and all that jazz. And I was even talking to my wife. I was like, how are we going to do this? Are we going to sit in the house and then have people do the do do do? There's someone at the front door, or are we just going to sit out front? She's like, well, I'll probably just sit out front. I was like, good.
Yeah, I think it's way easier because you just plan like an hour or two of that. That just makes it go so much faster and easier. And then you get a few beforehand and a few afterhand, but then it's just like, man.
When you let's talk when we got older here. When you were older, what age did you stop trick or treating?
I want to say it was probably late middle school, probably probably 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
You?
High school, probably freshman year, maybe sophomore year. I think it was just one of those ones where like I was bored and I was like, let's go get some candy. Because it got to a point where when I was older in middle school and high school, I wanted to scare people. Mm-hmm. Oh, so that was a costume. So, I had the Scream, the ghost face costume once, and I shoved newspapers. What are those? Up my sleeves, and I sat there like I was a stuffed dummy holding a candy bowl, so people would come up and grab it. I'm like, bah! Oh man, that was so much fun.
See, that's what stuff I was a huge kid too. When I was in 6th grade, I was 5'6" and 180 pounds, so I was a big middle school kid. So I was the one that got those snarky-eyed looks from adults as a 12-year-old, like, what are you doing? You're too old to be doing that.
I never got that. I never understood that. Like, my grandma was the same way. She's like, I have to turn off my light at 7 because that's when the big kids come. And I was like, okay.
I'm all for the only thing I don't like is when the quote unquote big kids come and they're not even dressed up. They show up in like t-shirts and jeans, like, trick or treat, give me some candy. You're like, come on, guys, you could at least try put a sheet over your head, like.
They show up, they're not dressed up, they have a pillowcase that they grabbed last minute. And they're like, hey, and you're like, guys, I'll give you candy, but put some effort into it. Come on.
Because I can't say that I'm not above when I see kids that have costumes that I really like. They might get a little extra candy. I'm just saying, it's the way it goes.
Somebody comes up and they're dressed up as the old school Optimus Prime. You're like, hold on, I got some full size candy bars for you.
Let me get my wallet.
You take 20s? Well, and I know we talked about this in a previous podcast too, but it was always, the haul, the score. What did you get at the end? There was times where you got your bucket and you're like, I'm only half full, and it felt like a failure of a Halloween. You're like,
yeah. I remember we would measure it in how many buckets we'd fill during a night or how many bags we'd fill. Mm-hmm. There was a couple years, probably 4th or 5th grade, that we'd go out trick-or-treating, and I actually come back home and unload my bag because it was too heavy to carry around. Like, you could literally get 4, 5, 6, 7 pounds of candy going around for stuff, and it was...
Well, and then when you get to a certain age, too, I mean, you learn it really quick at a certain age, rather. It's quality over quantity. Mm-hmm. So some houses, would give out the Tootsie Pops and the Tootsie Rolls, which are still, they're fine. Some would give out the circus peanuts, what we've talked about that in previous podcasts, where it's or candy corn, and a couple you'd get the popcorn ball or the candy apple, which your parents would just end up throwing away because there could be a razor blade in it. You don't know; it could be poisoned.
Yeah,
that was another huge.
That makes the handmade treats. You're like, I get you're trying to make something that's actually good and it's probably cheaper for you, but every rule of every kid for Halloween is don't take unopened candy. So you give out handmade stuff, you're just asking for it to get thrown in the trash, which I feel awful for. But you're like,
Well, I mean, it's the thing is like, the mentality of this could not be poisoned, but do I want to risk it? Like, this could be the most delicious popcorn ball I've ever had, but
it's also sitting right next to a full-size Mr. Goodbar in my bag, so I'm good. Tote the trash.
But yeah, I'm glad about the other one because, like, when you got the handmade stuff, like when they came out with and you could tell it was the homemade stuff, in your head you're like, oh, man.
It's like in a Ziploc bag tied up with a little bow at the front. You're like, thanks.
I got some cookies for you. And you're like, thanks.
Those houses, I actually preferred like the houses that gave out toothbrushes to those houses. At least I could use a toothbrush someday.
Yeah, someday. Well, and that was the thing too, is like in the 80s and the 90s, it was, the whole thing of where are your kids? It's 9 p.m. Where are your kids? Oh, they're trick-or-treating. Make sure you check their candy. Razor blades have been found and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, the mass hysteria just went public with it, as we've seen can happen with the media.
Well, it's doing it this year with fentanyl. Every news story is coming out, all the kids are going to get fentanyl candy. Like, I don't know if you guys know how the drug trade works, but I don't think people are just passing that out like candy.
Well, that was a huge thing. Remember when Colorado went legal with weed? That was a huge thing of, the news and everything like that was like, and, the mom groups saying, if they get gummy bears, just throw them out. They're going to be weed laced and blah, blah, blah. In my head, I'm like, I don't know anybody that would just give away drugs like that.
Bro, I'm going to give away these $35 gummy bears to these kids. Watch this. It's going to be great. No. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't want to get started. It'll just make me angry that people don't do any research on things and start researching things. But, it is what it is. Halloween season's a fun time. Any excuse to dress up, I'm all in for.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, look at us. We've used to throw theme parties. We go to Comic-Cons. I mean,
I feel like with our theme parties and dressing up, we were cosplaying before we knew that cosplaying was even a thing.
Well, that's what I was thinking. It's like, looking back at it, I always looked forward to Halloween because I was like, oh, I want to do this and this and this. And the costume may not have been the greatest thing, but I still enjoyed becoming something else, right? And then that's the same thing of when you had, home or school spirit week at school, and they would have different theme days, and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this and this and this, and we'd have fun with it. Mm-hmm. So, Halloween is great, but it's not the only day that you can dress up. You can pick any day and just invite your friends over.
I'll feel like we'll come up a day, and we're going to have to come up with a photo gallery of some of our reasons we dressed up for no reason other than we wanted to in the past and put these together because we got some doozies.
Well, one of them was just to watch Big Lebowski, right?
Yeah, Big Lebowski party, pirate party, the Mud Brigade costumes, all kinds of stuff. We've got some good stuff to go on, but we'll
looking through your photos from the past, if you were to bring back any one of these for right now, which one would it be?
I feel like I would want to bring back the Amazinger Z one just because it's a little off the wall. And possibly the walrus because then I could just knock on your window outside your door and terrify you.
I don't like that one. You want to buy some fish? Did you talk like that too?
Well, no, it was a rubber mask. It probably talked like this.
Was that a store-bought mask or homemade?
It was a store-bought mask that my mom then attached the whole furry, fuzzy part to the back of it to make it a whole head helmet thing.
What's your inspiration? I want to know what your inspiration was behind that.
I wish I could tell you. I look back at it and I'm like, what on earth was I? Okay. Fifth graders do what fifth graders do.
I would say for the next Comic-Con, you should bring back the penguin.
That could be a good one.
It's really good. I mean, you don't see the penguin like that anywhere. It's just a fun one.
Maybe I should. That would be a good one.
Do it.
Things to ponder. Anyway, if you've been listening to this, you can go check out the website, getgeekish.com. All the photos are there for you. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you probably already saw them because I'll just insert them in the video where they go up there and they'll look very nice. But I want to hear what your chime in. I want to hear your chime in. You need to tell us what your favorite costumes were growing up because I want to see what you dressed up as. Let us know in the comments at GetGeekish. And we'll see you next week. But happy Halloween.
Trick or treat.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We're now up over 200 episodes. We couldn't have done it without you. Be sure to follow us on social media, chime in your thoughts on there, and hit up the website at getgeekish.com.